Hi, welcome to the show. My guest today is Greg Bennick. He's spoken on stages throughout the world, including a TEDx stage, and he's here to talk about his new book, Reclaim the Moment: 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. We had an informative conversation about all the distractions in the world and how we can learn to tune those out and focus on what matters most right now and what can make a difference in the simplest way. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I think you'll enjoy it. Hello, Greg. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Ashley Buggy has been a regular on my show, and she brings fantastic people like you my way on a regular basis. So I'm really glad she helped us make this connection.
That's great. I'm thankful too.
Let's dive right in. So you have vast experience as a public speaker throughout the world and an author, but let's start with how you got to where you are now. And then I want to dive in a little bit more into the speaking aspect of your career.
Absolutely. It depending on what path of mine we focus on, I can tell you that a lot of it has to do with my mom. My mom is a brilliant speaker, and she was a professional speaker. And I'd put that in air quotes, but she did get paid to speak. She just didn't do grand stages in front of thousands of people and corporate events around the world and that sort of thing. But she's an incredibly compelling speaker, emotional, empathic, direct, concise, and really delivers impact. Basically, I'm pitching everybody on my mom and how you should hire my mom to come speak. But she doesn't speak professionally anymore. But growing up, seeing her inspire people and impact audience.
To see her speak, did you attend some of these things?
This is amazing. I used to see her speak in classrooms, and she was an aerobics instructor for a while, and I would see her in these informal settings. Well, when she started to speak professionally, I didn't see her until almost towards the end of her career, when I was visiting her on the East Coast, and she said that she had a sold-out speech. And I was thinking, a sold-out? Really? You got a sold-out speech? And I went to this event, and there was 200 people who had paid $2 a piece to see my mom, and she came out and did a speech called Exercising as We Age to senior citizens, and literally destroyed the room. Like 90 minutes of the hardest hitting keynote speech I've ever seen. I was jaw-dropped in awe.
How were you at that age when you saw that?
At that age, I was into my 40s when I saw.
Oh, so you knew what you saw. You knew what.
Oh, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew what I was watching, but at the same time, I'm like, that's my mom. What?
Yeah.
So a lot of the speaking is genetic, and I tell people that sometimes. You can easily overcome a fear of speaking. You can become a better speaker, but my inclination toward it is genetic, thanks to my mom.
I believe that it's genetic too. It sounds kind of, we were, in a family setting, there's different people who are in our family who can I've watched my nephew who's 19 grab the mic and just start talking to a room full of people he's never met. And it's fun too when you get to share some of what you do, like that it trickles down at all. I have a picture. Let's talk about TEDx here, because I have a picture I gave a TEDx talk to, and that's a very different kind of talk. It's 17 minutes, no more. No, you can go less. Yep. But it really helps you hone in on what's important in that talk. And I have a picture of my son, playing hooky from class in college to watch my TED talk. And a friend was taking the picture because he was watching it on its live feed. And that picture probably means as much to me as any picture of him, because for them to get to see something that we're doing that's hard, that it isn't, it's not the hardest talk I've ever given, but it's the one that taught me the most about myself.
I'm so glad to hear that. And just out of curiosity, not to flip the interview and interview you, but what did it teach you about yourself to do TEDx? And the reason I ask is that I'm a coach for TEDx Perth, Australia. So I am always curious as to what transformative element TEDx brings to its speakers. What changed, do you think?
I think because I was working with someone who'd given a couple of TED Talks, and I sent it over to him, and he said, Lisa, you have a big life and you have 4 talks here. You need 1.
Great.
And when I say big life, I don't mean like I'm a big deal. I'm just saying there's facets of my life that could be a talk, and I needed to really hone down. And it was very important to me that I include Sylvester Stallone and Rocky in my TED Talk.
Right.
And so I had to work that in and have it make sense. And then the Don't Wait project that I founded, my TED Talk's called What's Your Don't Wait Story? And so everyone has their own don't wait story. And I've traveled the country interviewing people about those stories. And so to, in 17 minutes, make sure, while part of my story is sad, making sure that the highlights are there too. And it starts with the typewriter I got when I was 8 years old. And I bought a cool typewriter on eBay that, was like that. And I had it on the stage. But it was just really important to learn, I got 17 minutes. What's the most important thing? If I never talk on a stage again, what's the most important message I want to share?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so you start to learn about yourself in that way,
That's
and you
great.
practice a lot in the shower, whatever. You don't use any cue cards. So you gotta be on it, or at least I didn't. And I wanted to be on it. And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
and yours is, you're on it, and so for you to coach people through that, it's an extra level of you, because you know what needs to be delivered. You know what needs to be delivered. So when you're coaching people through a TED Talk, what is it that you're looking for in them, that you think that that you're trying to take the layers away and let them focus on what's important in their talk? It's one thing if it's a topic, but sometimes people are sharing their lives. Sometimes they're sharing a topic. Sometimes they only take 5 minutes. That's of all of the 17 minutes that they use of their own.
Yeah. I mean, the most important thing is what's the mission? What's the story? What are you trying to communicate? Give me one thing. Give me one thing in 17 minutes that you're trying to communicate. And then everything you say, every word points towards that.
Yeah.
You have 17 minutes to impact everyone's life in the room. How are you going to do it? You're going to do it through having every word focus on the mission. So whatever it might be, if you've got 4 stories, strip it down to 1. If you've got 1, let's refine it. And then let's have every story you tell aim towards the mission of the talk. So that's the way to do it. And you're right that it's a pressure cooker. When I did my TEDx, and granted, I did it before people were doing TEDx's. I did it
before it was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, 15 years ago, I'll tell you, I've got an amazing story about that day. But what I'll say first is that they told me very simply, bring your A game and make no mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
So what's interesting, that day, 15 years ago, when I did my TEDx talk, the person who preceded me on stage was a man named Simon Sinek, and his talk, Start With Why, was premiered. He was the man who spoke before me that day. So I always joke that Simon Sinek opened for me. It's in my book. I always make that joke. Of course, for those who don't know, Simon's Start With Why is one of the most watched TED Talk in history. So,
yeah, one of the things too, I think about a TED Talk, that my strategy at least was, I didn't want to rely on technology, because I was afraid if that failed, then everything else kind of would trickle down. And so I wanted to rely just on myself, just on what I had practiced, and I actually was invited to give the talk. It was not an ideal time. I was getting ready to leave to go on tour, but you don't give up that opportunity. You don't pass that by. So to fit that in those 2 weeks of, getting prepared as I was leaving town for 5 weeks or whatever it was going to be for that tour. But I think that that's kind of, sometimes it's good if you're giving a presentation and there's slide decks. When I give a keynote, I use the slide deck, and, you have a lot of time to prepare, and it's recording, but it's not the only recording you're ever going to do. And so there's a little room for error, maybe, but in TED Talk, no.
Nope.
No room. Well, let's take a break. I want to talk about your book and some of the strategies. Your book is titled Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. And what I love about it is people think so far off, and what about right now that what could you do right now and not think so far away and overwhelm yourself? And you have some really great strategies that we can talk about. So let's take a break. We're here with Greg. We'll be back in just a moment. We're having a fascinating conversation with you, Greg Bennick. I want to talk about your book now. You are a TEDx speaker. You also speak, you've spoken on stages throughout the world, lots and lots and lots of talks. We just focused on TED Talks because it's a different kind of talk, and you're a coach and help other people give those talks. So let's talk about your book, Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. And would you agree that people get held back by thinking too far ahead and not thinking about the little things they can do today that makes just that moment better? That moment better, and that moment better. Next thing you know, you got a whole day that went well.
That's right. And not only thinking too far ahead, but also just thinking in distracted terms about the world around us. And I'm not a guru. I say that in my book. I'm not a shaman. I am not the instructor to end all instructors. And I'm not a self-help motivator. or a toxic positivity, leader of sorts. Quite literally, I wrote the book for myself in a way. I wrote my book to remind myself to build a better now. And that's the way to build the future that we want. So the strategies in the book are reminders to myself, for example, to believe in the possibility of kindness. We live in a world where oftentimes we think that people are out to get us. They're going to do us wrong. The world is evil. The world is terrible. If we stop for 1 minute and believe in the possibility of kindness and actually refocus on that, it opens up our minds to possibility. And then keep your eyes on the knife is a juggling metaphor. That's chapter 2 in the book, basically, or chapter 2 of the strategies, where I talk about if you were juggling a machete and 2 beanbags, where would you keep your focus? Would you keep it on the beanbags, or would you keep it on the machete, on the knife? And when we keep our eyes on the most mission critical thing in front of us, the thing that if it falls or fails has the most potential impact, then all of a sudden it creates possibility, creates freedom for us to do other things. So in a world of distractions, where we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people, and in a world where we're inspired so often to be thinking in terms of the future, the past, and all over the place at once, in a world with that many distractions, at least being grounded in this moment with perspective shifts that change our mindset is really valuable.
Yeah, one of the things that I think, all of that, I agree with that 100%. And one of the things that I think about too is if you just think about your corner of the world. So for me as a mom, my biggest job in my life is raise a good kid so that he can go out and be a productive member of society and choose good friends and build a beautiful life. And if he has children of his own someday, take what I did well, do that, do better on the things I didn't do so well, and then on down the line to the next generation. And so when you think about that when I look back now, my son's 25, and I think about how he turned out, and he's a wonderful human being, I think that the moments that we take, whether it's parenthood, in business, whatever it is, it's those little moments we aren't so much paying attention to. It's the innate part of us that shows up for our lives on a daily basis. And for some of us, it's also hard because maybe we don't have a skill in this one area. Maybe we're really patient, but we're disorganized, or maybe we're this, but we're not that. So when there's something that's glaring that is getting in the way of our full potential, whether that as a parent, as a business person, as a speaker, as a writer, whatever our field of interest in our profession, what is your advice for that when you are a highly skilled person, but maybe you just need to focus on these other things? What do you do when there's some things getting in the way?
Well, it's easy to say, pick the most mission critical thing, right? And sometimes we know what that is and sometimes it isn't, but sometimes we don't know what that is. And it's important to go in a different direction to find whatever our focus is. So that's why, and this isn't just a pitch for other chapters in the book, but quite literally, develop relationships that matter is another chapter in the book. So if I'm in a moment where I'm going this direction, that direction, up, down, sideways, backwards, forwards, maybe I shift gears and I think about developing a relationship. Quite literally, maybe I reach out to somebody I haven't reached out to in a while to connect with them and hear what they've got going on. Because when I hear from them that they're raising a kid and the kid is 25 and becoming a productive member of society, and that person is focused on that thing, all of a sudden I go, oh, wow, okay, I know where my priorities need to be. And I wouldn't have gotten there myself batting around ideas in my own head, but listening to other people. So developing relationships that matter is a way through that. Or leaping into the dark. That's another chapter in the book. What's the thing of the list that is most intimidating? What's the thing that is the thing you don't want to do? That's probably the direction that you need to go. That's probably a direction that at least has lessons or information in it that'll inform you on where you need to go and where you need to be. Because oftentimes, I know that when I feel overwhelmed, I'm thinking to myself, I have no idea what's going to push me in the right direction. But unless I dive in and do something, then there's only stagnation and I'm stuck. So I would recommend trying a totally different approach. And I'll give you a quick story that's true that speaks to this. When I signed my book contract, the publisher wanted the first 20,000 words in the first 6 weeks or something to that effect. So I got about 3 weeks in, I'm thinking about the book, I'm thinking. I want it to go this way. Do I want to go that way? Should it be? So many thoughts, no words. I hadn't written anything yet. I drove to Eastern Washington. And I know that that's out your neck of the woods. I drove out to Eastern Washington. I turned around. I picked up my phone. I hit record on a voice note and I talked to myself all the way back to Seattle, chapter 1. And I just wouldn't let myself shut up. I just talked and talked and talked about what chapter 1 might be. Chapter 2, kept talking, talking, talking. And that became the first 16,000 words of the book. When I transcribed those audio files, was it good? I don't know. Was it bad? Probably. Was it accurate? Maybe. But what it was pushing in a direction when I had nothing otherwise. That was the leap into the dark. Just go for it, no matter where you end up. You end up cutting out about 90% of it, but then you've got 10% of great stuff that gives you focus and direction like you wanted.
Well, and that's a very good, that's a very good example of what you're talking about, because are we talking about, the eat the frog, get up in the morning, do the thing you're dreading the most, and then you realize it wasn't so bad, so that gives you momentum for the rest of your day? Are you talking about this great big thing like your publisher wants 20,000 words, and how do you make that happen? Because, and even who you surround yourself, build those relationships. If you look around and there's really no one you want to aspire toward, then you might want to, maybe you got to back it up a little bit and start thinking about the relationships you already have. And that's an exercise to help you see that who am I surrounding myself with that's lacking the things that I desire or want to duplicate and pay attention to. So when you, I like, to talk, because people say to me too, as a writer, how do you become an author? Well, writing is different than an author. Writing is writing, author's business. And they're very different things, as you know. But you're a writer as soon as you start writing. And a lot of people just get really bogged down on the idea that it has to be great the first time. I've written things like you said, was it good? Was it bad? Who knows? But I've written things where I thought that's no good. And then 2 days later, I read it. And I never throw it out. And I'm like, well, there's some good stuff in there. And then you fill it in. And I think that that's a metaphor really for life. Like you could go through your day and say, that wasn't good. That wasn't good. But then overall, what did I achieve? And what do I need to work on next?
Yeah,
take it off little pieces.
Absolutely. I mean, and you have to, when you're writing, you have to. What allowed me to write the book finally was that in the middle of November last year, I shut my phone off to everyone other than about 4 people in my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't turn it on until January 1st. I skipped Thanksgiving. I skipped Christmas. I skipped all of it. I sat in my house and I wrote for 14 to 18 hours a day. And I would print out pages. I would X through them, redline them, rewrite them, constantly thinking, you know what, that's not authentic. That's not my authentic voice. I'm trying to pull over this line of BS on the audience. This is not me. Cut. Even if it meant an entire 3 days of work, cut, throw it away, start again. And that's what you have to do. You just have to leap into the dark and try it. And it's not just the big things like you're talking about. It could be small things too. It could be just, what do I need to do with my morning? What do I need to do with my day? What do I need to do with my team? When we think in terms of where do we need to be going? Sometimes you're going to make mistakes along the way. That's part of the deal. But I think that if we don't try, then we're doomed. So diving in, hit the record button and just start reciting chapters to yourself. That's the way to go.
How do you feel about self-imposed deadlines? And I say this because when I wrote my second book, I set the date for the launch party, and it was January, and I set it for September. And that meant every single thing, there was maybe like a 10-day fluctuation in what I had to get done, to get to the editor, to get to the designer, to all the things that had to be done. And I work really well that way. Well, I'm about to launch something that I said was coming in August. But I have recently lost my father. And so this summer, I do what I want if I have an opportunity to go do something. And so that put me back a couple of weeks. And I'm okay with that. So that's a little different. But I've been on deadlines for so long that I understand that nobody's sitting waiting for me to launch this thing that I'm going to put extra pressure and miss out on that week I spent in California with my mom. So I'm okay with that. But that's a lesson for some people that they don't really have a handle on, because they want to do it all and put these self-imposed deadlines on themselves. And really, it's about taking the time to take care of yourself. And you want to be accountable to people. And if you're a writer, obviously you have deadlines. But what do you say about self-imposed deadlines and how to lighten up on oneself?
Well, I mean, if the next sentence you gave me was that you decided to not do the product launch and just spend time with your mom for the next year, I would celebrate it. And I would say, that's your next book. Bingo. That's like really valuable.
True.
So I self-imposed deadlines are important to get things done, meaning I had to just be brutal with myself with this book. And I mean it. Like when I say I skipped Thanksgiving and Christmas, I literally ate frozen vegan pizza for both holidays. In fact, I think I eat frozen vegan pizza every day.
That's rough.
During that time. The point is that you got to do it, right? You just got to sometimes get things done. At the same time, there's a really poignant thing that you said, which isn't self-deprecating, but it's accurate. No one cared about your self-imposed deadline. And I'm going to even be so bold and say that if my book didn't come out on time, no one would care. No one cares. The world's still going on.
Yeah.
I'm entirely convinced there's still going to be presidential elections and wars and kids going to school and then somebody breaking up with somebody and somebody else getting married. Whether or not my book comes out, gets finished, or if chapter 2 really is as refined as it's supposed, you get the point.
Nobody cares.
We put these deadlines on ourselves because we put ourselves at the center of the universe. And when we step away from being the center of the universe, even for a minute, we remember, oh yeah, I guess I'm not the center of the universe.
Dang
this
it.
is spun off axis, right? This universe is spun off axis because I took myself off center here. I think it's important to remember that. That also alleviates the pressure, which also creates space for possibility. I mean, when we're under the gun, if you and I had books to write by tomorrow at 1 p.m, we would be sick with anxiety. Well, that also diminishes our potential to create effectively. So you have to be careful. It's got to be a balance, not to give you a 50-50, neither here nor there answer, but it's got to be a balance. I would suggest set the deadline and aim for it relentlessly, but recognize that it's in a sense arbitrary if the product isn't as good as it could be. Now, a book could always be better. There could always be changes. That said, go hard and make sure that the project is as good as it can be, and just know that you can refine later. Because if you burn yourself out, total anxiety, and you end up dead from stress, like, I don't mean to be crass, but I mean game over, so let's take care of ourselves along the way.
Let's take a quick break. We'll finish up in just a minute. Hi, we're wrapping up with you, Greg. Tell us the name of your book and where people can find it, please.
Sure. The book is called Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. It's available online. It's available in bookstores, anywhere where books are sold. You can order it. I can't promise it'll be in that bookstore, but it's definitely orderable. And people can find me at gregbennick.com. It's GregBennick.com, or on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and all of the places.
All of the places.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it something to be in all of the places and have like the content creation and the things that go into being an author? That's why I say it's a business. If you want to write and share your thoughts and give it to your family for Christmas, that's a great idea. If you want to be a writer and an author, that's a whole different idea. And there's lots of books to teach you how to do that too. So, but thank you so much for being here. It's great to meet you, and get to know you better. So thanks so much, and take good care of yourself.
Thank you too. I appreciate it.